Why do so many of us have trouble with forgiveness? Are you someone that believes forgiveness must be earned before you grant it? Do you believe that there are some things that are just simply unforgivable? Or are you someone who just struggles to let go of grudges? If this sounds like you or someone you know, today I'm going to be exploring the complexities of the concept of forgiveness. As the saying goes, to err is human, to forgive is divine. And that summarizes beautifully where this video will go. In the first section, I'll look at the psychology and understanding around why forgiveness can be so challenging for us and some perspective around this. And in the second section, I'll dive into the metaphysical, spiritual, or divine opportunity that forgiveness offers us. So let's start with some very basic physical facts that come along with the whole idea of holding on to hurts and resentments. And that's a hormonal one. It's fairly clear-cut scientific fact that when we are holding on to negative emotions such as anger and resentment through thoughts of judgment and criticism of another human being, that our stress hormones will increase. That's a given. Cortisol being one of the main ones, and adrenaline if we're particularly elevated in our emotions. And so just from that perspective alone, holding on to resentment, anger towards another person is actually hurting us straight off the bat, more than the other person, really. There's a clear physiological impact of not forgiving someone. So some of you might already know that, but still get stuck in the loop of holding on to these hurts associated with others. And the trap for a lot of us is that we justify that the other person is in the wrong. The conscious mind is great at doing that. Comes up with a logical reason why we should hold on to the hurt. It's pretty hard to argue against some of those logical reasons. But what I would say to you is, would you rather be right or happy? Or right or content? Or right or peaceful? A lot of us opt for being right rather than being at peace. Because letting go of the injustice is really hard for a lot of us. And that comes down to an unconscious belief for those of us that really struggle to forgive. Beliefs like the world should be fair, things should be fair, or justice needs to be served, or beliefs like I can't show my weakness or vulnerability, or I must win, or other variations like these. They're not necessarily happening consciously, or we might not find ourselves thinking those sorts of things consciously, but on a deeper level, those sorts of beliefs are driving our reactions and why we get so stuck. So it can really be helpful, though, to track down these sorts of beliefs by seeing that these patterns are at play and stepping back from the thoughts associated with these kinds of beliefs like, well, that's not fair, or they should pay, thoughts like this. And it's also helpful to ask yourself the question, okay, this is true, what I'm thinking about this other person, but is it helpful? Is it helpful for me to think this particular truth as far as what it does to me? And a lot of the times the answer is no. It's not helping you at all. And here is where the art and practice of acceptance comes into play. Accepting that what has happened in the past can't be undone. You can't go back. You don't have a time machine. Accepting that the other person didn't act out of respect or love, and you couldn't control that. Accepting that the other person or people are flawed, and you can't control that. Accepting that the other person has a blind spot. They're not able to see what they've done. Accepting that another person has an unconscious belief pattern blocking them from repairing or apologizing. Or even accepting that the person isn't around anymore. They may have died. So how can the relationship be repaired when they're no longer here? How can forgiveness happen if you're expecting them to come and apologize, and that's the only way that you can see forgiveness unfolding if they're no longer around? During a training course I did many years ago, the trainer shared a very cool way of defining what forgiveness is. I went to double check this definition, and when I went to good old Google, I found the old English Germanic origin to refer to forgiveness as giving pardon to someone as the origins of the word forgive. But I really like this way of breaking down the word forgive, which I'm still not sure whether it actually has truth in it or not, but it certainly is helpful. And it's breaking down the word forgive into linking it around the words of before and give. So to give yourself back what you had before the thing happened, the transgression happened. To give yourself back is a definition of forgiveness that I think makes a lot of sense. It's not about the other person at all. So give yourself back the peace of mind that you had before you started holding on to that resentment. And there's a really special story about Buddha. And the story goes that Buddha was on a journey with this particular companion, and the companion spent the whole journey verbally mocking and abusing Buddha. And after a series of days, finally asked Buddha, "How are you not reacting? How are you not getting angry at me for the way I'm treating you?" And Buddha calmly replied, "If someone attempts to offer you a gift and you do not accept the gift, who's left with it?" So in this story, the person, the traveller projecting the anger, was left with the anger. Buddha didn't take it on board as the gift. He didn't react to it. So again, another beautiful way of looking at how forgiveness is a choice of what we take on board. I'd also like to point out that everything I've just said applies to self-forgiveness as well. Isn't it interesting how we can bring forgiveness to another when we can actually do that? But when we believe ourselves to be guilty of a wrongdoing, we apply some ridiculously high standard to ourselves. So if you're having trouble forgiving yourself, try this. Imagine that you're sitting next to someone on a couch that you love or are close to who did exactly what you did, the thing that you're having trouble forgiving yourself for. And knowing that after they had processed what they'd done, they'd learned from it, they'd grown from it, could you imagine yourself saying to that person, "No, keep punishing yourself, you don't deserve forgiveness"? I suspect not. You wouldn't say that to another human being that you cared about. So why say it to yourself? But even with all this healthy perspective or attempting to bring mindfulness or acceptance to apply forgiveness, I'm very aware that many of you will still have trouble with forgiving. And when this is happening, we need to go to a deeper level, to a subconscious level, to work through the challenges. And I personally like working through the parts that are stuck with unhelpful ways of, holding on to injustice, etc., with a model like the internal family systems approach. One that I use both on myself and with clients. So for example, in an IFS session, you could, in a internalized alpha brainwave state, focus on seeking out the part that's holding on to injustice or the unfairness and get to know that part. Get to understand that part. Know that underneath it, there's a good reason why that part is having trouble letting go of it. And once you can find gratitude and acknowledge that part and connect with it, you can generally get the part to soften so it doesn't have to stay in the role that it's been in, that is so extreme. I've also trained an exercise where anger can be expressed in a way that creates a feeling of empowerment, but from a third person perspective, as a protector around this particular situation of injustice. And this is another way, an indirect route to forgiveness, because basically justice is brought in this imaginal scene, and afterwards the process of finding forgiveness becomes a lot easier. So there are ways like this where we go internally, where we dive into a deeper state of consciousness, such as an alpha brainwave state or beyond theta, and can process these aspects of ourselves in a different way. Now let's look at forgiveness from a metaphysical or divine perspective. From the quantum perspective, we are all one. On a purely 3D level, that doesn't look like it's the case. We all appear to be separate, but from an energetic perspective, beyond the physical senses, we are all connected in a unified field of collective consciousness. Just like the metaphor of fingertips observing each other. So from this perspective, the tips of the fingers would appear to be separate, but when they're traced down, they are part of the one hand. Very much the same way that we appear to be separate, but are not. So if we're holding on to resentment and judging another person, we're actually judging and holding negativity towards ourselves. We're all one, just experiencing things from our own unique perspective, but still part of the same oneness. And also from a higher perspective, someone who is hurting us or is projecting their hurt outwardly towards us is doing so because they are hurting themselves. They have simply lost touch with their true essence, which is love. We're all love at our core, but we've just forgotten it because of that programming, because of the protections that we needed to build up early in life when we didn't feel loved and supported by the world. And so what someone else does to us to hurt us actually has nothing to do with you. It's actually them projecting their own unconscious patterning towards you. It's nothing to do with you at all. And so in this way, you can learn to depersonalize that other person's behavior. That doesn't mean you necessarily stay around that human being if they continue to be hurtful towards you. If that's the case, create distance. But if you then need to walk away from that person, you can walk away without holding on to that resentment. That's a choice that we make, which is much easier to make when we're a little bit more distant from the situation. I would also suggest to you that nothing happens by accident. Divine consciousness or the multiverse is far too wise and intelligent for things to happen by accident. You are brought to certain events and experiences that your soul contracted in order to grow and evolve. And so what might seem random and unfair on a three-dimensional level is actually your higher self or soul bringing you experiences to help you transcend the illusion of separation, to put into action the remembrance that you are love and transcend those unconscious patterns and fears that are not who you really are. And yes, that includes even the massive, heartbreaking, soul-shattering things that happen, like having someone you love killed. Some will say that that is impossible to forgive. And I would never judge someone who isn't able to forgive something of that magnitude. That is not my place. And I would never seek to judge someone that isn't not able to forgive that. But I will say that everything that I've already said applies to the big and the small. As impossible as that might seem, I stand by that. And if you explore books like A Course in Miracles or Gary Renard's book, or his books starting with Disappearance of the Universe, which I very highly recommend as a way of making A Course in Miracles a much easier read, you may be able to understand that there is actually no difference in forgiving the small and the large things with respect to your own personal evolution and enlightenment. There are a number of stories from the genocide in Rwanda in 1994 where many women who lost their children and husbands, had them murdered, were able to forgive the killers face to face. And there are many other stories of similar feats of forgiveness that you can find throughout history. Things that would be deemed unforgivable to most. I'm not saying it's easy, but it is truly divine to forgive in all instances, but instances like these, it's incredibly powerful. Holding on to resentment and choosing not to forgive is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. I'm not saying it's easy to forgive, but when you realize that it is a process that is completely about a gift that you are offering you, the importance of finding a way becomes much clearer. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you again next time.